Have you ever made a typo that changed your life? Usually it's just embarrassing. But for 24-year-old Sienna Cole, a single wrong digit was the difference between life and death. Trapped in a bathroom, bleeding and broken, she tried to text her brother for help. She missed the number by 1 digit. She didn't text her family. She didn't text the police. She texted the private, encrypted number of Rowan Kovac, the city's most feared underworld enforcer. What happens when a monster in a badge meets a monster in a tailored suit? This is the story of how a wrong number started a war. You're listening to He Broke My Ribs. Let's get into the story. The silence in the house at 4209 Oak Creek Drive was louder than the shouting had been. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes the air feel thin. Sienna Cole sat on the cold tile of the master bathroom, her back pressed against the bathtub. She was trembling, not from the cold, but from the shock waves radiating through her nervous system. Every breath was a jagged negotiation with pain. She didn't need a doctor to tell her the 3rd and 4th ribs on her left side were fractured. She could feel the grinding shifting of bone every time her diaphragm expanded. Beyond the locked door, she heard the heavy, rhythmic thud of combat boots pacing on the hardwood floor. Thud, thud, thud. Sienna. The voice was calm. That was the worst part. Brett wasn't yelling anymore. He sounded reasonable. He sounded like the man who had charmed her parents, the man who had received a commendation from the mayor last week. "Baby, open the door. You're being dramatic. I barely touched you." Sienna squeezed her eyes shut, hot tears leaking out and stinging the split skin on her cheekbone. Barely touched her. He had thrown her into the granite kitchen island because she'd asked him why he smelled like cheap perfume and gunpowder. Brett Holloway wasn't just an abuser. He was a detective with the Vice Squad. He was the law. That was the trap she lived in. If she called 911, his friends would answer. Officers Miller or Davidson would show up, slap Brett on the back, tell her to calm down, and leave her alone with him. She had tried it once, 6 months ago. The beating she received after the patrol car left had kept her bedridden for 3 days. She looked at her phone. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass over the glowing LCD from when he'd slapped it out of her hand earlier. 14% battery. She needed Liam, her older brother. He was a mechanic in the next town over. He wasn't a cop, he wasn't powerful, but he was big, and he would come. He would get her out. Her fingers were slippery with blood and shaking so violently she could barely hold the device. She pulled up the messaging app. She didn't want to call. If Brett heard her talking, he would kick the door down. She typed quickly, her vision blurring. "He broke my ribs. I can't breathe. Brett is drunk and he has his service weapon out. Please help me. Please come get me." She went to type Liam's number. 555 0195. But a spasm of pain shot through her side as she coughed, her thumb jerking to the right. 555 0196. She didn't check. She didn't look. She just hit send. The message whooshed away, a little blue bubble of desperation floating into the ether. Sienna dropped the phone into her lap and wrapped her arms around her knees, trying to make herself small. She waited for the 3 dots that would show Liam was typing. She waited for the reply. "On my way." Outside, the pacing stopped. "I'm going to go pour a drink, Sienna," Brett called out, his voice closer to the door now. "When I come back, this door better be unlocked, or I'm going to take the hinges off. Again." The footsteps retreated down the hall. Sienna looked at the phone. Delivered. Then Reed. Her heart hammered against her bruised ribs. Reed. Why wasn't he replying? Liam always replied instantly. The phone buzzed. Sienna scrambled to pick it up, smearing blood on the glass. Unknown number. Who is this? Sienna stared at the screen, her blood running cold. It wasn't Liam. The contact name at the top didn't say Liam. It was just a string of digits. She had sent her death warrant to a stranger. Panic, sharper than the pain in her side, spiked in her chest. A stranger would call the cops. The cops would call dispatch. Dispatch would radio Brett, and then Brett would kill her. Her thumbs flew across the keyboard, desperate to undo the mistake. Sienna, wrong number. I'm sorry. Please ignore this. Don't call the police. Please don't call the police. If you call them, he'll know. She waited. The 3 dots appeared again. They lingered for a long time. Unknown number. You said he broke your ribs. Sienna sobbed silently. Sienna, it was a mistake. Just delete it. Unknown number. If you don't want the police, who were you trying to text? Sienna, my brother. Unknown number. Where are you? Sienna hesitated. She shouldn't tell a stranger where she was. But the pain in her side was becoming a roar, drowning out her thoughts. Brett was coming back. She could hear the clink of a bottle against a glass in the kitchen. Sienna, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry to bother you. Unknown number. Send me your location. Now. There was an authority in the text. It wasn't a question. It was a command. It felt different than Brett's commands. Brett's orders were manic, fueled by insecurity and whiskey. This felt cold, surgical. Sienna, I can't. He's a cop. He'll find out. Unknown number, a cop. Sienna, yes, please just forget this. Unknown number. What is his name? Sienna didn't know why she answered. Maybe it was the loss of blood. Maybe it was the realization that she was going to die in this bathroom tonight anyway. Sienna, Brett Holloway. The response was instantaneous. Unknown number. Unlock the window. I'm on my way. Rowan Kovach sat in the back of a dimly lit booth at the Nightingale, a jazz club that served as a front for the Solntsevskaya Bratva's operations in the city. The air smelled of expensive cigars and stale fear. Across the table sat a man named Felix, a mid-level distributor who was currently short $50,000 on his weekly kickback. Felix was sweating, his eyes darting between Rowan and the 2 large men standing by the door. It's coming, Rowan. I swear, Felix stammered. The shipment got held up at the port. Customs is cracking down. Rowan didn't speak immediately. He took a slow sip of his sparkling water. He didn't drink alcohol. Alcohol made you sloppy. Alcohol made you like the man Sienna Cole was currently hiding from, though Rowan didn't know her name yet. Rowan was 32, built like a linebacker, with eyes the color of fractured slate. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Felix's house. He was the right hand of the Kovach crime family, a man known in the underworld simply as the Butcher. Not because he enjoyed violence, but because he was efficient at carving out the rot. His personal phone buzzed on the table. He frowned. Only 5 people had this number: his brother, his 2 lieutenants, his lawyer, and his mother. He glanced at the screen. He broke my ribs. I can't breathe. Rowan read the message twice. A wrong number. A domestic dispute. Usually he would delete it and crush the phone. He wasn't a vigilante. He was a criminal. But then the follow-up texts came. Don't call the police. If you call them, he'll know. He's a cop. Brett Holloway. Rowan's eyes narrowed. The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10 degrees. Felix stopped talking, sensing the shift in the predator across from him. Rowan? Felix whispered. Rowan held up a hand. Silence. Brett Holloway. Rowan knew the name. Holloway was a dirty vice detective who had been seizing Kovach shipments and selling them back to rival gangs. He was a nuisance, a loud, arrogant nuisance who thought a badge made him untouchable. But that wasn't why Rowan's thumb hovered over the screen. 5 years ago, Rowan had a younger sister named Anya. She had dated a man like Holloway. Rowan had been too busy building the empire to notice the bruises. By the time he did notice, Anya was dead. A fall down the stairs, the report said. The boyfriend was never charged. Rowan looked at the text. I'm on my way. He stood up. What about the money? Felix asked, confused by the sudden departure. Keep it, Rowan said, his voice a low gravel. Get out of my city, Felix. If I see you again, I take your hands. He walked out of the club, the heavy bass of the music fading into the rainy night. He signaled to his driver, a massive ex-Spetsnaz soldier named Yuri. "We have a detour," Rowan said, sliding into the back of the armored Mercedes. He plugged the phone into the car's console. "Trace the signal from this number. I need an address. 30 seconds. Yuri didn't ask questions. His fingers flew across the laptop, mounted on the dashboard. Triangulating. It's a residential area. Oak Creek Drive, number 4209. The owner of record is Brett Holloway. How far? 12 minutes. Get us there in 6. The Mercedes roared to life, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. Rowan pulled a Sig Sauer P226 from his shoulder holster. He checked the chamber. A full magazine. He wasn't going there to save a damsel. He told himself that. He was going there to handle a business problem. Holloway was a liability. This was just leverage. But as the city lights blurred past the rain-streaked window, Rowan felt a cold rage tightening in his gut that had nothing to do with business. He broke my ribs. Back in the bathroom, Sienna heard the handle jiggle. "Sienna." Brett's voice was slurred now. The nice guy mask was slipping. "I'm done counting. Open the goddamn door." "Go away, Brett," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm going to count to 3, he said. 1. Sienna looked at the window. It was small, a privacy window, high up on the wall. Even if she could reach it, she couldn't fit through it with her broken ribs. She was trapped. 2. She looked at her phone. No more messages. The stranger said he was on his way, but that was 10 minutes ago. It was a lie, or a prank, or maybe he just realized getting involved with a dirty cop wasn't worth the trouble. 3. Boom! The door shuddered as Brett kicked it. Wood splintered around the lock. Sienna screamed, scrambling backward into the corner, curling into a ball. Boom! The door flew open, hitting the tiled wall with a crack. Brett stood there, looming in the doorway. He was a handsome man, objectively, with blonde hair and a jawline that belonged on a movie poster. But right now, his eyes were bloodshot and dead, and his lip was curled in a sneer. He held a tumbling glass of whiskey in one hand. "Look at you," he spat, stepping into the bathroom. "Pathetic. Hiding in the dark like a rat." He crouched down, grabbing a handful of her hair. Sienna cried out as he yanked her head back, forcing her to look at him. "You think you're better than me?" he hissed, the smell of alcohol overpowering. "You think you can judge me? I own this town, Sienna. I own you." He raised his hand. Sienna flinched, closing her eyes, waiting for the impact. Crash! The sound came from downstairs. It wasn't a knock. It was the sound of the front door being obliterated. Brett froze. His hand hovered in the air. "What the hell?" he muttered. He let go of her hair and stood up, his hand instantly going to the Glock 19, tucked into his waistband at the small of his back. "Stay here," he commanded. He moved into the bedroom, drawing his weapon. "Police!" he shouted, his voice trying to regain its authority. "Whoever is down there, I'm an armed officer. Identify yourself." Silence. Brett moved into the hallway. "I said identify yourself." Sienna dragged herself to the doorway of the bathroom. She couldn't see the stairs, but she could see Brett at the top of the landing, gun raised, peering down into the darkness of the foyer. "You made a mistake breaking into this house," Brett yelled, his bravado fueled by the liquor. A voice floated up from the darkness. It was calm, deep, and terrifyingly polite. "The mistake," the voice said, "was touching her." Brett fired 2 shots blindly down the stairs. Bang, bang. The deafening report rang in Sienna's ears. Before the shell casings even hit the floor, a shadow moved. It didn't run. It flowed. Rowan appeared on the stairs. He didn't look like a burglar. He looked like the Grim Reaper in a bespoke suit. Brett tried to adjust his aim, but he was drunk and slow. Rowan was sober and lethal. Rowan fired once. The shot took Brett in the right shoulder, shattering his clavicle. Brett screamed, dropping his gun as he spun backward, collapsing against the hallway wall. Rowan didn't stop. He walked up the remaining stairs, his gun held low at his side, stepping over Brett's writhing form as if he were a bag of trash. He looked down the hall. He saw Sienna. She was propped up in the doorway of the bathroom, her face pale, blood smeared on her cheek, her shirt torn. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. Rowan holstered his gun. He walked toward her, his movements slowing, becoming gentle. He stopped 2 feet away from her. He towered over her, radiating heat and danger. But when he looked at her, the slate-grey eyes softened. "Sienna?" he asked. He knew her name now. Yuri had run the background check on the ride over. She nodded, unable to speak. "I'm Rowan," he said. He didn't offer a hand, seemingly afraid she might flinch. "I received your text." Is he dead?" she whispered, looking past him at Brett, who was groaning on the floor. "Not yet," Rowan said simply. "That is up to you." He knelt down so he was eye level with her. "My car is outside. There is a doctor waiting. Do you want to leave?" Sienna looked at this dangerous stranger. She should be terrified. He had just shot a cop in her hallway. But for the first time in 2 years, the air in the house didn't feel thin. "Yes," she breathed. Rowan nodded. He reached out and effortlessly scooped her up into his arms. Sienna gasped at the pressure on her ribs. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "I'm sorry. I'll be fast." He turned and walked back towards the stairs. As he passed Brett, the detective looked up, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "You're dead," Brett wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. "Do you know who I am? I'm a cop. Every officer in the state will hunt you down." Rowan stopped. He looked down at Brett with a look of utter boredom. "You're not a cop tonight, Mr. Halloway," Rowan said. "Tonight, you're just a man who broke the wrong thing." Rowan shifted Sienna's weight slightly, ensuring she was secure, then looked back at Brett. "If you come looking for her," Rowan said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream, "I won't shoot you in the shoulder. I will peel you apart, piece by piece." Rowan carried her down the stairs, over the shattered remains of her front door, and into the rain. The cool water felt like a baptism on Sienna's face. A massive black car was idling at the curb. A giant of a man opened the back door. Rowan placed her gently on the leather seat. "Drive," he told the driver. As the car pulled away, Sienna looked back through the rear window. The house, her prison, was shrinking in the distance. She looked at the man sitting next to her. He was typing on his phone, his face illuminated by the screen. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice trembling. Rowan looked at her. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shivering shoulders. It smelled of cedar and rain. "Somewhere he can't reach you," Rowan said. "Go to sleep, Sienna. You're safe now." For the first time in her life, she believed it. But she didn't know that by getting into Rowan Kovach's car, she had traded a domestic war for a Mafia one, and the casualties were just beginning. Sienna woke up to the smell of antiseptic and expensive cologne. For a moment, panic seized her chest, a reflexive tightening of muscles that made her ribs scream in protest. She expected the yellowed peeling wallpaper of the house on Oak Creek Drive. She expected the smell of stale whiskey and the sound of heavy boots. Instead, she opened her eyes to a ceiling that seemed to stretch upward forever, painted a soft, matte charcoal. She tried to sit up, but a firm hand gently pressed her shoulder back down. "Don't move," a voice said. It wasn't Brett's voice. It was deep, resonant, and calm. "Dr. Sterling is finishing the wrap." Sienna turned her head. Rowan Kovach was sitting in a leather armchair beside the bed, his suit jacket removed, the sleeves of his white dress shirt rolled up to his elbows. He was reading a file on a tablet, but his eyes were currently fixed on her. An older man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, Dr. Sterling, was standing on her other side, expertly taping a compression bandage around her torso. 3 fractured ribs, the doctor muttered, not looking up. severe bruising on the left kidney, a hairline fracture of the zygomatic arch. That's the cheekbone. You are a very lucky young woman, Miss Cole. Another few millimeters on that cheekbone, and you'd have orbital damage. Sienna looked around. This wasn't a hospital. It looked like a bedroom in a palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the city skyline, currently weeping under the relentless rain. They were high up, penthouse high. "Where am I?" she croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "My home," Rowan said. He stood up and poured a glass of water from a crystal carafe on the nightstand. He brought it to her lips, tilting it carefully so she could drink without sitting up. The erratic movements of an ambulance would have caused you more pain. Dr. Sterling makes house calls. Sienna drank greedily. "The police." "The police are not coming here," Rowan said, placing the glass down. "This building is complicated to enter." Dr. Sterling finished the bandaging and packed his bag. He looked at Rowan with a weary expression. "She needs rest, Rowan. No stress. And for God's sake, keep her hidden. If Holloway survives, he's going to turn the city upside down." "He will survive," Rowan said coldly. "I shot to incapacitate, not to kill. Killing a cop brings the feds. Maiming a cop just brings the local heat." The doctor shook his head, picked up his bag, and left the room without another word. Silence stretched between them. Sienna pulled the silk duvet up to her chin. She looked at Rowan, really looked at him. In the harsh light of the bathroom, he had been a savior. Here, in the soft, ambient lighting of his penthouse, he looked like a king, but a dangerous one. The tattoos peeking out from his collar spoke of violence. The scars on his knuckles spoke of wars. "You're a criminal," she whispered. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Rowan didn't flinch. He sat back down in the armchair, crossing his legs. "I am. I run the Kovac syndicate. Gambling, shipping, protection." "Why did you come for me?" Sienna asked, her voice trembling. "I'm nobody. I texted the wrong number." "You could have just ignored it." Rowan looked out the window at the rain. His jaw tightened. 5 years ago, he began, his voice low. "My sister, Anya, was dating a man, a banker. Respectable. He beat her for 2 years. She never told me because she knew what I would do to him. She thought she was protecting him from me." He turned his gaze back to Sienna. The intensity of it pinned her to the mattress. "One night she called me. She didn't say anything. She just cried. I was in a meeting. I told her I would call her back in an hour." Rowan paused. He rubbed his thumb over a silver ring on his pinky finger. "I didn't call back in an hour. I called back in 2. She didn't answer. By the time I got to her apartment, she was gone." Sienna felt a lump form in her throat. "I'm sorry." "I don't want your pity, Sienna," Rowan said, his tone hardening slightly. "I'm telling you this so you understand. When I saw your text, he broke my ribs. I didn't see a stranger. I saw Anya." He stood up and walked to the edge of the bed. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "You are not a prisoner here, but you cannot leave. Not yet. Holloway is alive. He is a detective. He will spin a story that you were kidnapped. If you go out there, the police will rescue you and return you to him. And next time, he will make sure you can't text anyone." Sienna shivered. She knew he was right. Brett was a master manipulator. He would tell everyone she was unstable, that she had run off with a drug dealer, that he was the victim. "What do we do?" she asked. "We wait," Rowan said. "I have people watching the hospital. I have people watching your brother." Sienna shot up, wincing as pain flared in her side. "Liam? If Brett hurts him—" "Lie back down," Rowan commanded, though his voice was gentle. "Liam is safe. I have 2 men parked outside his garage. If Holloway or any of his corrupt friends go near him, they will intervene." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a new phone, a sleek, black device. He placed it on the nightstand. "This is encrypted. You can use it to browse the web, watch movies. But do not log into your social media. Do not contact anyone. If you transmit a signal that can be triangulated, you endanger us all." Rowan walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "Get some sleep, Sienna. Tomorrow, we start the war." As the heavy oak door clicked shut, Sienna lay back against the pillows. She was in the home of a mob boss, a man who admitted to being a criminal, a man who solved problems with bullets, and yet, as she closed her eyes, she realized she felt safer with the wolf at the door than she ever had with the sheepdog. Brett Halloway lay in a hospital bed at St. Jude's Medical Center, his shoulder packed with gauze and fire. The pain was blinding, but the rage was clearer. Captain Miller stood at the foot of the bed, his face grim. Miller was a good cop, in the sense that he didn't beat his wife, but he was a bad cop, in the sense that he looked the other way when his officers cut corners. He protected the Brotherhood above the law. "Give it to me again, Brett," Miller said, notebook in hand. Brett winced, playing up the pain. He needed to sell this perfectly. "I came home. Heard screaming," Brett rasped. "I kicked the bathroom door in. She was on the floor. There was a man. Big, dark suit. Eastern European accent. He had a gun to her head." Brett paused to take a shallow breath. The lie tasted sweet on his tongue. "I drew my weapon. Identified myself. He used her as a human shield. I couldn't take the shot cap. I couldn't risk hitting Sienna. He pushed her down the stairs. I tried to grab her. He shot me. Took her out the front door. Black Mercedes. No plates." Miller's knuckles turned white as he gripped the bed rail. "Kidnapping. Attempted murder of a police officer." "It's the Kovac crew," Brett said. "I've been squeezing their distribution lines at the docks. This is retaliation. They took my girl to get to me." Miller slammed his notebook shut. "I'll issue an APB. Every patrol car in the city will be looking for her. We'll tear Kovac's operation apart brick by brick." "Get her back, Cap," Brett said, squeezing out a fake tear. "She's fragile. God knows what they're doing to her." As soon as Miller left the room, Brett's expression shifted instantly. The sorrow vanished, replaced by a cold reptilian calculation. He reached for his phone with his good hand. He dialed a number that wasn't in the police directory. "Yeah?" a scratchy voice answered. "It's Halloway," Brett said. "I need a locate on a cell phone. The one I pay you to track." "The girl's phone?" the voice asked. "It's dead, boss. Signal cut out last night at your house. No ping since." Brett cursed. Sienna must have ditched it, or the Russian destroyed it. "All right," Brett said. "Plan B. I want you to pay a visit to the brother, Liam Cole." "You want him clipped?" "No," Brett hissed. "I want him scared. I want him to know that his sister is missing and that the Russians took her. Make him believe it. If he thinks Kovac has her, he'll go to the press. He'll make noise. Kovac can hide from the police, but he can't hide from a public outcry. Consider it done." Brett hung up. He leaned back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. "You think you can run, Sienna?" he whispered to the empty room. "I'll burn this whole city down to find you. And when I do, you'll wish you had died in that bathroom." Across the city, 10. In the penthouse, the morning sun was trying to break through the grey clouds. Rowan stood in his kitchen, wearing a black t-shirt that clung to his muscular frame. He was making espresso. It was a domestic act that looked strange, performed by a man of his lethality. Yuri walked in, holding a tablet. The big Russian looked concerned. "Boss," Yuri said, "turn on the news." Rowan picked up the remote and flicked on the wall-mounted TV. The screen showed a photo of Sienna. It was an old photo, one where she was smiling, vibrant, before Brett had drained the light out of her. The headline read, "Detective's girlfriend kidnapped in gang retaliation." A reporter stood outside St. Jude's Hospital. "Police are launching a citywide manhunt for Sienna Cole, 24, who was abducted from her home last night after a violent altercation that left a decorated vice detective in critical condition. Sources say the kidnapping is linked to the Kovac crime family." Rowan turned the TV off. The room plunged back into silence. "He is smarter than I thought," Rowan muttered. "He controls the narrative." "We have a problem, Rowan," Yuri said. "The police are raiding the warehouses. They just kicked in the doors at the shipping depot. They aren't looking for contraband. They are tearing the place up, looking for the girl. We are losing $1 million an hour." "Let them raid," Rowan said calmly, sipping his espresso. "The warehouses are clean. I moved the inventory 3 days ago." "It's not just the cops," Yuri said, hesitating. "The commission called. The other families. The Italians, the Irish. They aren't happy. The heat is bad for everyone's business. Don O'Malley said if you don't return the girl by midnight, they will consider you a liability." Rowan set the cup down. The porcelain clinked sharply against the marble counter. "O'Malley is a fat coward who hasn't held a gun in 20 years, Rowan said. "He has an army, Rowan." "So do we." Just then, Sienna walked into the kitchen. She was wearing one of Rowan's dress shirts, which hung on her like a dress, reaching her knees. She looked pale, holding her side. "I saw the news on my phone," she said, her voice shaking. They're saying you kidnapped me. They're showing my picture everywhere." Rowan walked over to her. He hated seeing the fear in her eyes. It reminded him of his failure with Anya. "It's a story, Sienna. Nothing more." "My brother will see it," she said. "He'll think I'm in danger. He'll try to find me." "My men are with him," Rowan assured her. "You don't understand." She grabbed his arm. Her fingers were cold. "Liam isn't just a mechanic. He used to fight. He has a temper. If he thinks you hurt me, he won't call the police. He'll come for you. And he'll get himself killed." Rowan looked at her hand on his arm. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through him that he hadn't felt in years. He covered her hand with his own. "Then we have to move fast," Rowan said. "We can't hide anymore. If Holloway wants a war, we give him a war. But we do it on our terms." "How?" Sienna asked. Rowan's eyes were cold slate. "By proving he's a liar. We aren't going to hide you, Sienna. We are going to put you on center stage." "I don't understand." "Tonight," Rowan said, "is the mayor's charity gala. The whole city will be there. Judges, politicians, the police commissioner, and likely Captain Miller." Yuri's eyes went wide. "Rowan, you can't be serious. You want to walk into the gala with the most wanted woman in the city." "Exactly," Rowan said, a dark smile playing on his lips. "Holloway says she was kidnapped. Kidnapped women don't attend black tie events on the arm of a billionaire. We are going to walk right through the front door." Sienna stared at him. "They'll arrest you." "They can try," Rowan said. "But in a room full of cameras and the city's elite, the police can't shoot first and ask questions later. We will expose Holloway in front of the people who give him his power." He looked at Sienna, his gaze softening. "But you have to trust me. You have to be brave enough to stand next to the monster and tell the truth. Can you do that?" Sienna thought of Brett. She thought of the ribs he broke. She thought of the fear she had lived in for 2 years. Then she looked at Rowan, the man who had burned his world down to answer a wrong number. She squeezed his hand. "I have nothing to wear," she said. Rowan smirked. It was the first time she had seen him truly smile. It transformed his face from terrifying to devastatingly handsome. "Yuri," Rowan barked, "get the stylist and tell the boys to suit up. We're going to a party." The dress was emerald green velvet, high-necked and long-sleeved, designed to conceal the bandages wrapping Sienna's torso and the bruises blooming on her arms. It was backless, however, revealing a strip of pale skin that Rowan had traced with his eyes for a fraction of a second, too long, before turning away. Sienna stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the guest suite. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her hair, usually a messy bun, had been styled into sleek, old Hollywood waves that covered the healing cut on her cheekbone. Makeup artists had worked for an hour to hide the discoloration around her eye. She looked expensive. She looked powerful. She felt like she was about to vomit. "You look," Rowan's voice came from the doorway. He stopped, struggling for the word. "Formidable." He walked into the room. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like armor, midnight blue instead of black, with a gun holster barely visible beneath the tailored cut of the jacket. "I can't do this," Sienna whispered, her hands shaking as she clutched a diamond-encrusted clutch. "Captain Miller will be there. The district attorney. They all know Brett. They'll arrest you the second we walk in." Rowan stepped behind her, meeting her gaze in the mirror. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a warm weight against her back. "They expect a cowering victim," Rowan said low in her ear. "They expect a woman who has been beaten into silence. If you walk in there with your head down, they win. But if you walk in there like a queen, you take their power away." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a necklace, a single teardrop-shaped emerald surrounded by diamonds. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said, fastening it around her neck. His fingers brushed her nape, sending a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. "It is a symbol of protection. As long as you wear it, you are a Kovac, and no one touches a Kovac." Sienna took a deep breath. The pain in her ribs was a dull ache, a reminder of why she was doing this. For herself. For Liam. To stop Brett. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." The Grand Hotel ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air hummed with the murmur of gossip and the clinking of champagne flutes. At the center of the room, Captain Miller was holding court, laughing with the mayor. He looked relaxed, confident. He was telling a story, likely painting himself as the hero of the city. Then, the double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. Usually the arrival of a guest went unnoticed, but Rowan Kovac didn't just arrive. He altered the atmosphere. The music didn't stop, but the conversation did. A ripple of silence spread outward from the entrance as heads turned. Rowan stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at the assembly with bored indifference, and on his arm was Sienna Cole. She wasn't bound. She wasn't crying. She was clinging to his arm, not out of fear, but out of intimacy. She looked radiant. "Dear God," someone whispered. Rowan leaned toward her. "Chin up, walk." They descended the stairs. Every step was a declaration of war. Flashbulbs from the press pit erupted like strobe lights, blinding and chaotic. "Miss Cole, are you safe? Rowan! Did you kidnap her?" "Is it true Detective Halloway was shot?" Rowan ignored them all. He steered her straight toward the center of the room, cutting a path through the crowd like an icebreaker ship. People parted, a mix of fear and awe on their faces. Captain Miller's smile vanished. He dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, but no one looked at the mess. They were looking at the ghost. Rowan stopped 3 feet from the captain. The tension was thick enough to choke on. "Captain Miller," Rowan said, his voice smooth and carrying over the hushed crowd. "Enjoying the party?" Miller's face turned purple. "You son of a... You have some nerve showing your face here. Officers, arrest this man!" 2 uniformed officers near the buffet table stepped forward, hands on their holsters. "Stop!" The voice didn't come from Rowan. It came from Sienna. She stepped forward, releasing Rowan's arm. She winced slightly as the movement pulled at her ribs, but she stood tall. She looked directly at Captain Miller, the man who had ignored her complaints about Brett 6 months ago. "If you arrest him," Sienna said, her voice trembling but gaining strength, "you are arresting the man who saved my life." The room gasped. The mayor stepped closer, intrigued. "Saved you?" Miller sputtered. "Miss Cole, you're in shock. Stockholm Syndrome. Halloway said..." "Halloway is a liar," Sienna cut him off. The silence in the room was absolute. "Brett Halloway beat me. He broke my ribs. He tried to kill me. I texted a wrong number for help. Rowan came. He didn't kidnap me. He rescued me." She turned to the press, finding a camera lens. "My name is Sienna Cole. I am not a hostage. I am a witness, and I am pressing charges against Detective Brett Halloway for attempted murder." Miller looked around frantically. He saw the doubt in the mayor's eyes. He saw the reporters scribbling furiously. The narrative was crumbling. "She's delusional," Miller hissed, stepping into her personal space. "Grab her. Get her to a hospital." Rowan moved. It was a subtle shift, just a single step, but he placed his massive frame between Sienna and the captain. He looked down at Miller with eyes that promised violence. "Touch her," Rowan said, "and you will lose that hand." Miller froze. He knew Rowan's reputation. He knew the butcher didn't make idle threats. "This isn't over, Kovac," Miller whispered. "No," Rowan agreed. "It's just beginning." He offered his arm to Sienna. "Shall we dance?" It was a power move of the highest order, to stay and dance in the face of the police. Sienna took his arm. They moved to the dance floor. Rowan pulled her close, his hand careful on her back, avoiding her injuries. They swayed to the music, surrounded by enemies. Yet in that moment, they were untouchable. "You were perfect," Rowan murmured, looking down at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I almost fainted," she admitted. "But you didn't." He spun her slowly. For a moment, the gala faded away. There was just the scent of cedar, the warmth of his hand, and the realization that the monster in the story was actually the prince. But the fairy tale couldn't last. Rowan's earpiece buzzed. He stiffened. "Talk to me, Yuri," he said, his voice dropping to a command. Sienna saw his eyes darken. The slate turned to black. "Understood. Bring the car around. Front entrance, hot." He stopped dancing. He looked at Sienna, and the softness was gone, replaced by the soldier. "We have to leave," he said. "Now. What's wrong?" "Miller made a call," Rowan said, guiding her quickly toward the exit. "He called in a SWAT team. Not the local boys. A private tactical unit off the books. They aren't coming to arrest us, Sienna. They are coming to liquidate us." The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, turning the city streets into slick rivers of neon reflection. Rowan and Sienna burst out of the hotel doors just as the black armored Mercedes screeched to the curb. Yuri was already behind the wheel, the engine revving like a trapped beast. "Get in!" Rowan shouted, shoving Sienna into the back seat and diving in after her. Ping! A bullet sparked off the doorframe, inches from Rowan's head. "Go! Go!" Rowan yelled. Yuri slammed the accelerator. The heavy car fishtailed, tires smoking against the wet pavement, before gripping and launching forward. Behind them, 3 black SUVs peeled out of the side alley, their lights off. No sirens. These weren't police vehicles. This was a hit squad. "Heads down," Rowan commanded. He pressed a button on the door panel, and steel shutters slid up over the windows, sealing them inside a dark, armored cocoon. The interior of the car was illuminated only by the dashboard lights. Sienna was hyperventilating, the adrenaline crashing into pain. I thought the gala made us safe," she gasped. "It bought us time," Rowan said, pulling a submachine gun from a hidden compartment under the seat. He checked the magazine with a metallic clack. "But Miller is desperate. If you testify, he goes down with Halloway. He needs you dead tonight." The car violently swerved to the right. Metal crunched against metal. "They are trying to box us in," Yuri shouted from the front. "Ramming speed." "Do it," Rowan said. The Mercedes surged forward, slamming into the SUV, trying to overtake them. The SUV spun out, crashing into a parked bus, but the other 2 were still on their tail. Gunfire erupted outside, a dull thud, thud, thud against the armored plating of the car. "Are we going to die?" Sienna asked. It was a small voice, childlike. Rowan looked at her. In the dim light, his face was fierce, beautiful, and terrifying. He reached out and cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "Not tonight," he swore. "I promised you safety. I keep my promises." He turned to the partition. "Yuri, take the bridge. We lose them in the industrial district." "The bridge is blocked!" Yuri yelled. "Roadblock ahead! It's the cops!" Rowan cursed in Russian. "It's a kill box. Miller set us up." He looked at Sienna. "Can you run?" "My ribs." Adrenaline is a powerful painkiller, Rowan said. We have to bail. The car is a coffin if we stop. The Mercedes screeched to a halt in a narrow alleyway between two warehouses. Out! Rowan kicked the door open. He grabbed Sienna's hand, pulling her into the rain. They ran. Sienna's breath came in ragged gasps, each one a knife in her chest. But she ran. She ran in her heels until she kicked them off, running barefoot on the cold, wet concrete. Rowan didn't drag her. He ran beside her, shielding her body with his own. They burst into an abandoned textile factory, the heavy steel door slamming shut behind them. Rowan jammed a metal pipe through the handles to bar it. Upstairs, he ordered. High ground. They scrambled up a rusted metal staircase to the catwalks overlooking the factory floor. It was dark, smelling of rust and old oil. Below them, the door boomed and shook. The hit squad was cutting through. Rowan pulled Sienna into the shadows of a control room overlooking the floor. He crouched by the window, weapon raised. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "Rowan," she said, clutching his wet jacket. "Why are you doing this? You could have left me at the hotel. You could have walked away." Rowan looked back at her. The rain dripped from his hair into his eyes. "I walked away once," he said, his voice raspy. "I walked away from Anya. I told myself it was business. I told myself I was busy." He reloaded his weapon. "You are not business, Sienna. You are the only thing that has made me feel human in 10 years. If they want you, they have to burn me to ash first." The door below burst open. 6 men in tactical gear flooded the room, scanning with laser sights. Rowan didn't wait. He opened fire. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Rowan was a machine. Controlled bursts, precision aiming. 2 men dropped instantly. The others scrambled for cover, returning fire. Bullets sparked off the metal railing near Sienna's face. She screamed, covering her head. Rowan moved, firing, moving, firing. He was drawing their fire away from her. Suddenly, silence fell. The shooters stopped firing. "Kovac!" A voice echoed from below. It was amplified. Distorted. "Check your phone!" Rowan frowned. He didn't lower his gun. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell. It was ringing. A video call. He answered it, keeping the screen angled so Sienna couldn't see. But she saw his face. She saw the blood drain from Rowan Kovac's face. She saw the hand holding the gun tremble just once. "Let me see her," the voice on the phone said. It was Brett. Rowan turned the phone screen towards Sienna. She stifled a scream. It was a video feed. Her brother, Liam, was tied to a chair in the middle of his auto repair shop. His face was a mask of blood. One eye was swollen shut. A man was holding a gun to Liam's temple. Brett's face appeared in the corner of the screen. He was in a hospital bed, looking pale but triumphant. "Hello, sweetheart," Brett crooned. "Did you think I wouldn't anticipate you running? I know you, Sienna. You're loyal, stupidly loyal." "Liam," Sienna sobbed, "leave him alone." "Here is the deal," Brett said, his voice hard. "You have 30 minutes. Rowan surrenders. He walks out of that factory, hands in the air, and lets my team put a bullet in his head. If he does that, I let Liam go." Brett smiled, a cruel, twisting thing. "If Rowan isn't dead in 30 minutes, I blow your brother's brains out. Live on camera." The screen went black. Silence returned to the factory, heavy and suffocating. Sienna looked at Rowan. He was staring at the blank phone screen. He looked up at her, and for the first time she saw defeat in his eyes. He couldn't shoot his way out of this. He couldn't fight an enemy who wasn't there. "No," Sienna whispered, shaking her head. "No, Rowan, you can't." Rowan stood up. He checked the safety on his gun and set it down on the control console. He began to unbuckle his holster. "He will kill Liam," Rowan said quietly. "Holloway is a psychopath, but he is a transactional one. He wants me more than he wants your brother. He'll kill you!" Sienna grabbed his shirt, bunching the wet fabric in her fists. "You can't do this. There has to be another way." Rowan took her hands in his. He kissed her knuckles, then her palms. "There is no other way. Not in 30 minutes. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, tasting of rain and gunpowder and goodbye. "Stay here," he commanded softly. "When they hear the shots, wait 5 minutes. Then call Yuri. He will get you out." "Rowan, please." He pulled away from her. He walked to the door of the control room. He looked back one last time. "I'm sorry I broke your ribs," he said, a sad smile touching his lips. "But I'm glad I answered the phone." He turned and walked out onto the catwalk, raising his hands in the air. "I'm coming down!" Rowan shouted to the men below. "Hold your fire!" Sienna collapsed to the floor, sobbing. She watched through the grate as Rowan descended the stairs, walking toward the execution squad. But as Rowan reached the bottom step, Sienna's eyes fell on the discarded gun on the console, and next to it, the encrypted phone Rowan had given her. 30 minutes. She wiped her tears. She was Sienna Cole. She had survived Brett Holloway. She had survived the gala. She wasn't going to let the man she loved die for her. She picked up the phone. She didn't call Yuri. She dialed a number she had seen on a file in Rowan's office, a number labeled The Commission, O'Malley. If she wanted to start a war, she needed an army, and she was about to make a deal with the devil himself. Sienna didn't call Yuri. She dialed the number for Don O'Malley, the head of the rival Irish mob. "Who is this?" O'Malley growled. "The woman who can save your business." Sienna's voice was steel. "Holloway is a loose cannon. He's bringing heat on all of you. Save Rowan Kovac right now, and I hand you the corrupt cop on a silver platter. Let Rowan die, and I go to the feds with your shipping routes." O'Malley paused. "Deal. Duck." At the factory, the mercenary cocked his gun against Rowan's head. Suddenly, the skylights shattered. O'Malley's enforcers rappelled down, MP5S blazing. In seconds, Brett's hired guns were dead. Rowan stood amidst the smoke, looking up at the catwalk where Sienna stood. No longer a victim, but a queen who had just commanded an army. "What did you do?" Rowan asked in awe. "I made a trade," she said, descending the stairs to take his hand. "Now let's finish this." An hour later, Brett Holloway lay in his hospital bed, checking the clock, convinced Rowan was dead. The door opened. Rowan walked in, blooded but alive, with Sienna at his side. "You're dead!" Brett screamed, scrambling back. "Not quite," Rowan said, tossing a thick folder onto the bed. "Bank transfers, hit orders, bribes. O'Malley keeps good records. The FBI is in the lobby." "Prison?" Brett laughed nervously. "I'll get protective custody." Sienna leaned in close, her eyes cold. "Rowan made a call. You're going to general population. You'll be locked in with the very men you put there." As the FBI agent swarmed the room, handcuffing a screaming Brett, Sienna turned to Rowan. "Let's go home." 6 months later, Sienna sat in a private booth at the city's finest restaurant. Her brother, Liam, was safe, now running the family's legal auto division. Across the table, Rowan poured vintage wine. The fear of the past was gone, replaced by power and peace. Sienna pulled out her phone. She opened the contact, still saved as wrong number. "Sienna, I love you." Rowan checked his phone and smiled, that rare, devastating smile that was only for her. "Rowan, I'm on my way, always." And that is the story of how a single wrong digit toppled a corrupt detective and built an empire. Sienna Cole didn't just survive her trauma, she weaponized it. She went from a victim locked in a bathroom to a queenpin sitting at the head of the table. It makes you wonder, who is sitting in your contact list right now? And if you were in trouble, who would answer? If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories of dark romance, revenge, and twists you won't see coming, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I'll see you in the next story.